What's going on, everyone? Today I'm going to be walking you through the ERAS Supplemental application. This is a supplement that was just started this year. 2021 is the first year they're starting it, and it is kind of like the supplementary applications that you filled out for medical school. However, instead of being unique to each program, this is one supplemental application that gets sent to all the programs, and it's not necessarily something that every specialty is doing right now. So I'm going to walk you through the ins and outs of this application by showing you my own. Obviously, I will blur out my personal information, but I will also go ahead and show you that there is a supplemental guide, which I will link in the description below, which encapsulates everything you need to know about this. There's also a bunch of terms and conditions, all of that stuff. All of the fun links will be linked below, but the point is you have to agree to these three things before you get started. But as you get started, you will now see that there are only three specialties right now that are utilizing this supplementary application. And within each of these specialties, not all the programs are actually utilizing the supplement either. For example, in dermatology, as of right now, I think around 70% of programs are utilizing this supplemental application. In general surgery, I'm not entirely positive, but I think about 50% are. And same with internal medicine, only 50% are utilizing this supplementary application. So what does that mean? It means that if you are applying to a program and it is accepting the supplement, they will get the answers that you fill out for your supplementary application. And if you're going to a program that does not currently accept the supplement, they will not get these answers. So in a way, this is entirely optional as of right now, but it is important that you understand that this is slowly becoming a thing, and it's important to understand it. The supplemental application is made up of 4 sections: past experiences, geographic information, preference signals, as well as work preferences. The past experiences section is something that you will be able to talk about your 5 most meaningful experiences in medical school and talk a bit more about them. That's something that's going to be included in the dermatology supplement, the general surgery supplement, as well as the internal medicine supplement. Then you have the geographic information section, which allows you to mention what part of the country you want to do residency at. There's, I think, 8 or 9 regions of the country, and it's all broken up, and you get to pick which of those 9, what 3 do you want to participate and give a preference for. So dermatology is participating in that geographic section. General surgery is not, which means if you're a surgery applicant, the supplemental application will not have the geographic information section, or you should not fill it out because the programs will not get that information. But internal medicine is participating in that. And the whole point of this is to say, like, hey, if you're from the West Coast and you want to go back to the West Coast, you can signal that to programs. Or if you're from the Midwest and you want to go back to the Midwest, you can signal a preference for those locations and explain why. You also have this thing called preference signals. This is essentially when you are allowed to tell up to 5 programs that are participating in the supplemental application that you really want to go there. It's essentially kind of like it's kind of like super liking a school. The school knows that you're interested in them, and by you telling them up front that they are one of your top programs, they will be like, oh, Prerec's interested in us. Maybe we should rank him a bit higher. In internal medicine, I think you can rank up to 5 schools in your top 5. You can say up to 5 schools that you want to send a signal to. And I believe for derm and surgery, it's up to 3. So with all of that to say, this is what the entire supplemental application is based on. And now I kind of want to walk you through the details of it. Now, this is the general experiences section of the supplement. It's available to, as I mentioned, those 3 specialties we discussed earlier. I'm going to blur out this part here so you don't understand what my personal meaningful experiences are. But the point is you can list up to 5 meaningful experiences. You can talk about your title. You can talk about the name of the organization, talk about the start date, the end date, if it's ongoing, the frequency of participation, whether that's one time, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, the type of experience it is, whether that's education, military, professional, research, teaching, mentoring, work, other, as well as the location and setting, urban, rural, multiple settings, etc. And then the last part is, does this experience require the knowledge of medicine or healthcare? You fill this out for your top 5 applications. For many of you who are pre-med, you may remember back when you filled out the AMCAS application, you got to pick 3 experiences you got to talk a bit more about. In this case, it's 5, but you actually only have 300 characters to describe those experiences. So now let's go a bit into that detail. So now the next page of those 5 experiences that you just listed, you now have to list the institution, and specifically you pick the type of institution it is. And then from there, you describe the type of patient care if it was applicable. If there was no patient care, you can type in not applicable. And the last part is the clinical training type, if this was a clerkship, a rotation, a sub-internship, and whatnot. Again, this is entirely supposed to be a way for you to categorize the experience, but if your activities don't fall into this category, that's also totally fine. Now this page, if one of the last if one of the last 5 activities you placed was a research activity, they will ask you more questions about that activity. For example, the first thing they ask you, and I'm obviously going to blur out a lot of this, but I will read out to you the options that are shown on my screen, just so you can at least get an insight. It will ask you about the research type. Is it basic science, clinical, translational, educational, epidemiological, or quality improvement, or other? The next thing they'll ask you is the type of research, output, or scholarly work you got out of this, whether that was a publication, a oral presentation, a peer-reviewed book chapter, a poster, a non-peer-reviewed publication, etc. The next thing they have is a citation, which allows you to put one research article, if you want to cite it, you can cite it there. And then it also asks you if you have additional research outputs, like if you have more than one publication, to which you can usually answer yes or no. At the bottom, you then have a linear line of the different aspects of writing a publication, and you can decide if you were a lead or a collaborator in any of them. So for example, in the literature search/review part of the process, were you a lead or a collaborator? On the study design, were you the lead or the collaborator? On the data collection, were you the lead or the collaborator? And by doing all of this, it asks about your involvement in the research activity. So point being, if you put research as one of your top 5 most meaningful, it asks you for a little bit more information in this sort of page. And now on this next page, you actually have a follow-up questionnaire about your volunteer experience. So if one of the 5 experiences that you listed as your most meaningful was a volunteer experience, it actually then asks you to subclassify the type of patient population that you serve through that volunteer experience, such as immigrants, children, individuals with disabilities. There's a lot of options here, but you get to pick. And then you also get to pick the option that best describes the secondary focus or the secondary population that's served. So you don't always have to pick one or the other. You can pick different types of populations and focus on them. So on this page, you actually now get to describe why each of the 5 activities, up to 5 activities that you listed, was meaningful. So on the left column, you can see the different activities listed, and on the right column are describing why they're meaningful. However, the only caveat to this is that you only have 300 characters, 300, with spaces to describe these experiences, so you don't have much space, but the whole point is that this is additional room on top of what's already given in your ERAS, which is different. In ERAS, you have a little bit more space to describe your activity, but these are the 5 most meaningful, so they give you an additional about 300 characters to do exactly that. On this next page, you actually get to spend 750 characters talking about any impactful experiences that you've had that may not fall into the boundaries of anything that you've been able to discuss in your applications. So in this case, you can see that this is actually designed to give applicants an opportunity to provide more stuff about their background and life experiences that is not discussed elsewhere in your application. So again, this is optional. You can fill it out if you feel like you need to. Otherwise, you don't have to. Entirely up to you. And now we come to the geographic preferences of the application. Here, you can see that the United States map is shown, and it's also shown to be broken down into different regions, such as the Pacific Northwest. You also have New England here, as well as the Middle Atlantic. It's broken down into many different divisions. Depending on the type of supplement you are doing, for example, internal medicine does include division preferences. You are allowed to pick up to 3 locations that you can send a preference for. None of those divisions will be talking to each other, so if you send a preference for the Midwest, people in the Northeast won't know that you sent a preference to the Midwest. Only the people in the Midwest will know that you sent the preference there. Similarly, if you send a preference for the West Southern Central region, which is Texas, you can see, people outside of that region will not know that you sent a preference for that region. You can pick up to 3. There's a lot of different regions. I believe there are 9 total regions, and there's also a chance for you to pick that you don't have a preference at all. Again, this is entirely up to you to fill out if you have a preference. If you don't have to pick it. But just know that for every preference you fill out, you will be given 300 characters, 300 characters to write about why you have a preference for that region. Again, you don't have to tell us why you have a preference, but if you want to, you can say, I have family, I have friends in this region, I want to explore this region, I haven't been here before. As of right now, this is only for people who are applying to dermatology and internal medicine, but it is possible that this could expand to other specialties as well. Again, remember that you will actually have 300 characters for each of the preferences you select. Even if you select I don't have a preference, you get 300 characters to write about why you don't have a preference for a certain region. This page is a little bit of an addendum to the previous page where you now get to decide about rural versus urban. Urban areas tend to be areas that are very densely populated. You have a lot of people. Think about like New York City, that is urban. And then rural, R-U-R-A-L, tough for me to pronounce, is areas that are sparsely populated. So you think about like central Pennsylvania as a little bit more rural than urban. Places that are a little bit more in the middle of the country are more rural, and those both have very different patient populations. And so the whole point here is to exhibit your preference if you have a preference for one or the other, and then you're again given 300 characteristics to describe why you have a preference for a certain region and why that's the case. So this is a very, very cool option, I thought, because it makes sure you understand that there are different types of patients living in different types of environments across the country. Now we have reached the last section, which is called the preference signaling section. In this, as I mentioned earlier to you, you get to signal to up to 5 programs if you're applying to internal medicine categorical about why you want to go there. And in this case, you don't actually get a description. You literally just name 5 programs. The order doesn't matter. And those programs will then get a signal saying, hey, Prerec's interested in you. I hope you know that. He sent you a little super like, so to speak. And so you can do that for up to 5 programs, but note that all 5 programs have to be participating in the supplemental application. So you cannot send it to a program that is not participating in the supplemental application. So for example, if School X is not participating in the supplement, I can't send a preference signal to School X. But if School Y is participating, I can send a preference signal to School Y. So that's the only thing I want to mention here. I picked up to 5 programs and I can send them a signal. But again, another thing to note here, do not pick programs where you've done an away rotation or it's your home institution, because those are kind of already implied to be preferences for you if you did a rotation at them or if you go to med school there. So you're intended to send a signal to one program that you haven't been physically at, and you're not allowed to send more than 1 signal to one program. It's not like if you send 2 signals to Stanford, they will be like, oh, he's doubly interested in us, okay? So that's the whole point of this. And last but not least, I think we're about done here. It just asks you if you want to submit the ERAS application, and once you press that, you then are taken to this work preferences section, which I have opted out of, but you can respond to, and it's for research purposes only, intended to, I think, give AAMC some insight into what exactly types of work that you want to do, but this is not sent to program. And so that about brings us to the end. If you press next here, you'll see that you reach the end. I'm not going to submit my responses here. I did that purely for the sake of making this video, which I hope you all found helpful. If you did, drop a like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.